Welcome to Elevate and Thrive, Breaking Barriers for an Empowered Life. I'm your host, Jen Smith, and I am so excited to be on this journey with you. In this podcast, we are going to dive deep into the transformative stories of individuals who have faced adversity head-on, emerged stronger, wiser, and more empowered. I'm here to share those stories with you, to remind you that no matter how dark the night may seem, there is always light at the end of the tunnel, and there is a sunrise waiting to greet you. To inspire you to break through your own barriers, rewrite your own story, and to step into the light of your true potential. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being on this episode of Elevate and Thrive, Breaking Barriers for an Empowered Life. My name is Jen Smith. I am your host. We have an exciting guest today. I am so excited about the things that she's going to talk about today. It's very, very close to my heart. Her name is Dr. Beata, and she is going to share her journey of health, the things that she's gone through with her daughter, and what led her to where she is. And she just has so much knowledge and so many gems that she's going to share with us today. So I'm super, super excited to have her on the show. Welcome. I'm so glad that you're here. How are you?
Thank you, Jen. I'm doing great. And I just wanted to, again, express my gratitude and thanks for you having me on your show. And also, we connected years ago. And I just want to, again, thank you for all of your support years ago, because during that point is kind of when my journey really accelerated and things were really happening. So I appreciate your support back then as well.
I love it. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to reconnect. We actually met each other back kind of in the beginning of my coaching journey. And so that was what brought us together. Going with that, can you share with the listeners what was going on for you in that time period and what led you up to where you are now? And just share with the listeners how you got to be where you are.
Yes, thank you. So it's been a wild journey, and many of us, probably the listeners as well, have experienced some challenges or struggles in their lives, right? And mine were going on for a while. Now I can look back and see that, but things really intensified, I would say, when I had my daughter. And my beautiful daughter came into this world and she had severe food allergies. And that, as a new mom, was, a huge wake up call, and that can be really stressful. And so my partner at the time, we were having some issues with our marriage and some problems. And during that whole experience, it was a real eye opener as far as who was there to support me, who I had to lean on. And through that process, I realized that I didn't have a lot of resources and I didn't have a lot of support and help. And so in many times, with the mental health challenges of postpartum anxiety, some depression, sleepless nights with a baby who wouldn't stop crying, as you can imagine, all that compounded, in addition to not being able to go back to work in the clinic as a holistic doctor of physical therapy, like I was doing for years before. It felt like my life just kind of flipped upside down and I was lost. And especially with the health challenges, with my daughter's health challenges, I realized that I had my own health challenges, including autoimmunity, food allergies, hormonal imbalances, and more, which was really scary to be like, okay, I have these significant, severe things going on that I need to take care of myself so that I can be there to help my daughter and help her as well. And so our healing journey just, accelerated at that point because, like I say, as moms, we'll do better research than the FBI. And, I was out there and it's like I had my healthcare background already, but I only knew so much. And that's what all of us do, right? We do the best that we can with what we know. So I was tapping into I had a nutrition degree, I had a doctorate in physical therapy and, just healthcare background in general. I was tapping into that and we weren't getting the answers that we needed. So I had to dig deeper. I had to look for mentors. We went through so many practitioners to find one who understood what we were going through and who was able to help us, because we went from specialist to specialist to specialist. We were invalidated. We were, just like, oh, just feed her. I'm like, are you kidding me right now? Like, did you even hear anything? Do you see this screaming child that I'm holding for this, 10 minutes that I'm talking to you? It was just very stressful at the time. And so through that journey, it was not just a physical healing journey, it was an emotional and mental and spiritual healing journey at the same time. And I took all of that experience through the years with myself, with my daughter. And at one point realized, like, oh my gosh, I have something so powerful here that I have to share it. It's like I have my traditional background. How can I combine all of this experience, all of this, personal challenges that we've gone through and overcome and are still overcoming, right? How can I combine that into a powerful system that I can help others with? So I started initially my coaching program and my practice for other breastfeeding moms who were having that issue, the food allergies, colic, eczema, reflux with their children. And then soon realized as I was working with them that the moms had issues themselves, right? And then maybe their children were no longer breastfeeding, but they still had the conditions. And then, they kind of continued to grow. And I'm like, oh, I'm using the same system, the same protocol, and helping these people with all these different conditions until finally it clicked. And I'm like, okay, these are the underlying root causes of any signs and symptoms, especially chronic and inflammatory conditions. And it was this moment where it just grew and expanded to something more than I could have imagined. And, up to this point, I've been growing my mastermind life program, my resources, and now starting to train other practitioners or people who want to become practitioners as well in what I call the Radiant Health Protocol to really address the root causes effectively and to see healing and improvement in health and wellness, no matter the signs or symptoms or conditions.
I love this so much. And I love that you are talking about root cause healing. That is something that I am so, so passionate about in my coaching as well. Getting to the reasons behind what the surface level things that are manifesting on the surface, right? I think it's so important to dive deep. And I love that you were able to see these commonalities and really put these pieces of the puzzle together throughout this journey. It sounds like this was absolutely part of your purpose. I feel like people go through these painful, really hard experiences, but oftentimes, and I would venture to say most of the time, if not all of the time, there is a reason behind it and there is purpose behind it. Because I heard you say that you had to get this message out there, but at what point did you really understand, hey, this is part of this? Like, this is happening because, I got to get this out there.
Right? And it was, I think, shortly after, we were, speaking and talking and whatnot, that all these pieces just started coming together. And honestly, I call it just divine guidance. And it was just literally like this light bulb went off and like this aha moment of, wow, what I have is really powerful. And, it's one of those things as a mom who is sleep deprived or, doesn't have a lot of time. And this goes to everyone because, we can talk about, people who are coaches or entrepreneurs or, I mean, just the regular person who's managing family and work and extracurriculars and, whatnot, all these things, right? We don't have a lot of time. We don't want to be spending hours and hours and hours doing self-care work. It's wonderful if we can, but that wasn't the reality for me. I had a baby attached to me 24/7. And so it was this moment of like realizing that if I could do it with the limited resources that I had, that anyone could do it. And that's the beauty of it, is that you don't need hours and hours to do work every day or to do these practices, and they become your being. And that was, I think, that moment when I realized that I was transforming into a different person. When these things that I learned, I anchored into my identity and into my being. And it wasn't just like, a thing I'm checking off of a habit tracker list or like anything like that. It is who I am. And that's that transformational piece that happens. And it's not just for health or wellness, your entire life shifts when you start doing that because it extends. And I believe it's all mirrored back and forth. So what's happening internally in us is a mirror of what's happening externally. And so when we start really understanding that, we start, I call it decoding the body, but decoding our lives, understanding that, all right, this is a message. It's trying to, give me some kind of insight or information. And then the empowering piece is, what do I do with it? I get to choose how I handle this and how I alchemize the situation. So just like you mentioned, these stressful events, they are our purpose, and that it's the process of alchemizing it into, hey, this was really tough. And this situation was super stressful. And I'm able to be so grateful for it because I wouldn't be here right now if that didn't happen. And I'm sure you and the listeners can have some insights into some situations where you've had that as well, where it was so hard to go through. It might have been super stressful. You might have been at your lowest low. And how can we alchemize that and make it into something beautiful, make it into purpose, make it into something healing that we can help others and heal the world at the same time?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, for people that might be struggling finding the good in
Yes.
some of their experiences that they've had, do you have any advice or insight through your own experiences that you might be able to offer that could be helpful to people that are really struggling to see that good or that purpose or even just that smallest thing to be grateful for in everything that is happening for them?
Absolutely. And I was there as well, because there are moments where it feels like everything is falling apart, like the world is literally crashing on you. And it is taking that moment to just become really present was one of the things that really helped me, because this is part of the protocol as well, as regulating our nervous system. And so when we are dysregulated, when we are in fight or flight, when we are in a stressful mode, literally it's kind of like this never ending cycle. It kind of feeds on itself, right? And by interrupting that pattern, when we come back to the present moment, it might not fix everything, but it gives you that window. It gives you an opportunity. And so one of my favorite techniques, there's two things that come to mind, but the first technique is just a 5 4 3 2 1 technique. But you can do any numbers that you want. It's just helpful to remember it that way. But all you want to do is activate your senses. And so literally scanning the room, what are 5 things that you can see? What are 4 things that you can touch? Different textures, your clothes, whatever it is, different textures, feel it, become present with it. 3 things that you can hear. Again, it can be loud, it can be quiet, it can be your own breathing. Just listen for 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, 1 thing you can taste. And that's a quick way. Again, that can take just a couple seconds to do. But wherever you find yourself, if you take that 30 seconds, that 1 minute to just really become present. And then I love heart-centered work. So putting my hands on my heart connects me to my heart, my soul, the divine. And I just tell myself that right now in this moment, I'm safe. Everything is okay right now. And that it takes away the worry of the future. It takes away momentarily, even if just for a couple seconds, any things that we're ruminating about from the past, anything that we're worrying about the future. We just come back to the present. So that's a great way to break that cycle and to pattern interrupt. And the more that you can do that throughout the day, the better you'll be at starting to get back into regulating. There's lots of other techniques that we can use, but that's one of my favorite ones because it's simple, it's quick, and it's effective. And then the other one I love is just gratitude. So I teach a gratitude kind of journaling process, but literally, if you can be grateful for anything, if you can be grateful that you woke up today, if you can be grateful that you have clean air to breathe, if you can be grateful that you have a roof over your home, whatever it is, just shifting into gratitude and really sitting with it. Because it's easy to say, okay, yeah, I have a roof over my head. No, feel into that. Like drop into your heart and be like, I have shelter. It's 95 degrees here on the East Coast, and I am sitting in air conditioning. How lucky am I? Or, whatever it can be, just really dropping into the gratitude. And it can seem a little challenging at first, but get those 1 or 2 things and write them down, make it tangible, something you can go back to and see. And then what I work with clients is expanding that. So going from 1 or 2 things to challenging yourself to write 5 things every day, to challenging yourself to write for 2 minutes nonstop about all the grateful things, all the things that you're grateful for, to challenging yourself to write for 10 minutes a day of, all the things you're grateful for, until again, it becomes a being where you can be grateful for absolutely everything. And it's a journey, it's a process. So if you're like, there's no way I can be grateful for everything, that's okay. It'll happen with time. And give yourself grace and permission to work at your own pace, to go at your own pace, and just start with one or two things. So those are my top two kind of things that I just think of that are helpful for everyone in general.
I love that so much. And I agree. I actually use those same techniques in my practice with my clients, and I've used them with myself too. I love what you said too about the nervous system, because I think that that is something that has been very overlooked. And I think that, and I'm curious to hear what I want to loop back to something you said earlier, but in this day and age, with how stressed out people are in general, I feel like this is the number one cause of different disorders and also disease in our bodies. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. My top two root causes that I work with are emotional energetics, which are stress related, and then gut health, which is more the physical aspects. But absolutely, I believe that everything has an emotional root cause.
Yeah, I do too. So earlier, when you were talking about your story and kind of what led you here, you mentioned that there were some very common things that you were finding and you put all the pieces together. Can you share what those common things were that you discovered as part of the puzzle?
Right? Absolutely. And so it really goes back to our patterns and beliefs that were mainly started back in childhood. So, are you familiar with the ACEs study,
Yes.
Jen? Yes, right. So, for those who are listening who aren't, the Adverse Childhood Events Study is a monumental study that I think just barely touches the surface. And so, what it does is it had a survey and they sent it to, I forget how many thousands of people, and then they tracked their health over decades. And what they saw is that people who experience multiple adverse childhood events, and these can be things like having parents who are divorced, having substance abuse in the family, being exposed to either violence or sexual abuse, etc. They had a kind of a list of top 10 things. And the more ACEs that someone had, the more likely they were to have conditions such as diabetes, as heart issues, as obesity, etc. And so these are, when you look at the country, the US, these are our main top issues, health issues that people are having. And when we really look back, those are the root causes. And so at the same time, I want to say that many of us may have had some of these ACEs. There's a website where you can go and take the questionnaire yourself so you can see how many you have. I'm saying this and sharing this not to disempower you and be like, oh my gosh, all these things happened to me. I'm screwed. I'm going to have, all these conditions. There's nothing I can do. No, that's the awareness piece. That's the consciousness piece. And now is the empowerment piece of knowing that you have the agency to transform that experience, to use it again, alchemize it into something beneficial, to grow and learn from it and heal from it. And so, again, when we look at these emotional energetics, so much begins in childhood. And I want to say that the majority of our caregivers, not all, but the majority, were really doing the best that they could with what they knew and what they had, right? We come back to that because that's what we do right now in this moment. I'm doing the best, speaking to you that I know, right? And vice versa, everyone. So give yourself grace. Like, we're all on a journey. We're all in a process. We're all learning and growing. And when we start realizing this, then we can do something about it. Then we can take the time to work through it. And the other thing I want to mention is that these conditions, like you said, they live in our body. They are dis-ease, right? Dis-ease. So they become trapped in our body, certain emotions that we weren't able to express, right? How many times as children, I know I was, you may as well, and some listeners as well, how many times were we told to stop crying, that it's not okay to be angry, that you get what you get, and don't complain about it, don't express yourself, etc. All of these things that we've heard repeatedly over and over and over have become ingrained in us. So I distinctly remember as a child being proud of myself that I didn't cry for a certain number of years.
Yeah.
And I look back and I go, oh my gosh, how much was I holding in because it wasn't okay to cry in front of my caregivers? And I was probably under 10 when I remember consciously making this statement, right? I started internalizing that as my belief. It was no longer my caregiver's belief. It was my belief that it's not okay to cry. And I honestly didn't work through that until my 30s. So if you think of how many decades some of us are holding in of tears that we were meant to shed long ago, and when or anger or whatever it was, right? Whatever experiences, whatever emotions we were feeling, when we don't express them and we don't integrate them and process them in a timely manner, in a healthy way, they literally become stuck in our field. And they become physical disease, they can become mental or emotional conditions, and they live in our energetic field. And we carry that baggage around for our whole lives. And when we really look at it, when I work with clients, no matter what it is, there are the same, again, root causes of holding so much in, of not feeling safe, of, again, not expressing ourselves, not feeling like we're understood, not feeling like we're worthy, not feeling like we're deserving, not feeling like we're enough. And over time, these grow and develop, and they change the way that we interact as we grow up, right? As we're teenagers, into adulthood, into relationships, into, partnerships, etc., into our business and career. I remember this affecting me when I was working in the clinic and I was working with a doctor who was a bully, and he would stand there and berate me in front of patients, in front of other practitioners, and I wouldn't say anything. I would just take it because that's what I was conditioned to do. I was conditioned to just accept whatever the authority figure was saying and not speak up and not stand up for myself. And I have to say, it is so liberating once you start working through that. It can feel almost like too much at times when all of a sudden you're like, I have a voice and I can stand up for myself and I can authentically express myself. There's a transitional phase where you may have all these emotions coming up. And, initially I would get really angry when I started standing up for myself, and I'd be like, no, this is my authentic self. And that's a normal process because it's all that anger that was pent up for decades that is now finally able to be released. Because when that doctor was standing there berating me, I wanted to scream at him. I wanted to say, stop, you have no right to talk to me like this. But I didn't do anything. And so that anger lived inside of me, creating issues, creating health problems, creating autoimmunity, all these other things. And so again, it's just so liberating and amazing and empowering when we start seeing that and understanding that we can do something about it.
I can totally relate to that as a little girl. And by the way, it's so interesting to hear your methodology and how you view things, because I have come to the same conclusions on my end from a different angle. So you came to that conclusion through the health aspect of things. I came to that conclusion through mental part of things, and really through the psychological component. It's the same answers. We've come to the same answers because on my end, absolutely, it roots back to childhood. I have not met a client yet, and including myself in this, because I am also a client of what I do. I have coaches as well, but I have not met a client yet who we can't trace things back that are affecting their current life now in some way, shape, or form to childhood. And I can very much relate to what you're saying. On my end, I was in my 40s before I started releasing this emotion, because I was very similar when I was a little girl. I would keep everything in, and I was the quiet one, and I was just this good, quiet little girl, and I didn't cry, and I didn't really show emotion. I didn't show anger. I really just was very quiet, and I was always just kind of over in the background coloring, or doing whatever it was. And I always got this praise, I guess, positive reinforcement for being so good. But really what was happening internally was I was just holding everything in. I was not allowing my system, my body, my nervous system to release the emotions that I was feeling. And so if something made me angry or something made me sad, I would just stuff it down. And then as a little girl, I quickly realized that, well, it didn't feel good to just stuff this stuff down. And so then what happens is you numb out, and your body is so intelligent and your mind is so intelligent that you just kind of intentionally or subconsciously shut off this feeling part of you. And so for many years of my life, I went through, and it's not that I couldn't feel, certain things. I don't mean that in like every context, but for the most part, it was like I got really, really good at compartmentalizing my air quotes negative emotions, right? So it was the sadness, it was the frustration, it was the anger, those things that were not acceptable to show. And those things absolutely carried with me for my entire life. I heard you talk about when we're little, these beliefs form our reality and they form our programming, and that carries with us. And so oftentimes in our adult life, our little kid self is making the decisions based on the beliefs that we had that formed back in childhood. And it's not the logical adult. It's like consciously we could know that certain things that we're doing don't make sense based on our current reality, our current world. But it's that little kid self that's still kind of running the show until we really stop and start to take a look and start to dig into these things in our childhood and really be willing to sit with it. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. And one thing I do want to mention, because some people, start hearing this and they're like, there's no way I'm going to, go back and heal the things from my childhood, because it can actually seem really scary. And the thing that I want people to know is that you don't have to be re-traumatized. You don't have to go back and like psychoanalyze, and you don't have to do that. There are ways that we can work, and I work somatically with the body. Because our body holds it, we can work with the energy of our body. And I call it divine guidance and intuition, to recall and only work with the things that we need to release and process and integrate. So for example, there are certain techniques that I'll use with clients, and they'll start crying, and I'll be like, oh, like, what are you remembering, or what are you thinking? They're like, nothing. I don't know why, I'm just crying. And I go, perfect. Just cry, let it out. And, because we don't need to remember it, but that sadness will come up, and, that anger will come up, and we may feel like we want to scream or shout, and that's okay. And again, it's this safe space that whatever you want to do, whatever comes up and feels like is needing to be released, go ahead and do it. I'm not here to judge. I'm here just to hold space and to guide you through this so that you are safe. And so that's an important thing, because we don't have to go back and dig deep, because some of us experience some really traumatizing things, some really bad things, and we can still heal from it without having to go back and re-experience it. So I just want to put that out there, because some people, and I actually was one of these people that was scared too. I was terrified too. And again, having gone through it myself and dozens of clients, I know that this process, you don't have to. It's a safe space to do it in, and it's powerful at the same time. That's the other piece, is that clients feel a literal physical change. There are clients all of a sudden who feel like a weight lifted up. There are clients who literally are like, oh my gosh, I've never been able to take such a deep breath before. People who I do these little mini retreats, and it was funny. I was doing one which was called a Holistic Detox, and on the break, literally everyone came back from the bathroom and was like, I've never peed so much in my entire life. And I'm like, yeah, we're working with the energy, but it releases physically too. So there's all these ways that your body can release and let go. And again, it doesn't have to be scary. It doesn't have to be painful. And again, there's a safe way to work through it and to heal as well.
Yes, I totally agree. And I think the key word that you're saying there is safe, right? It's like making sure that you feel safe in releasing the energy that has been held in your body. And I totally agree. It's the release of that energy. And we are energetic beings. I mean, that we are made of energy. Our entire bodies are energy. And so when we're holding these emotions in our body, that energy takes up space. And so, like you mentioned, being able to breathe better, it's like we hold grief in our lungs. When you release that grief, it's like, oh my gosh, we've created space inside of ourselves, inside of our systems, to be able to do what we're meant to be doing as we're meant to be doing it. Emotion is just a record of energy from the past. And so releasing that, like you said, is absolutely how we heal on so many levels. And I love that you talk about that safety part of it, as far as creating that safety in your system, because that's so important. So, for the listeners, do you have anything else that you would like to talk about as far as what you're doing now, what you are focused on? I know you've got some really exciting things in the works right now. Can you talk a little bit more about that and how people might be able to find you, and just some things that you're working on that you want to share?
Absolutely. Thank you, Jen. And, it's all connected because we are quantum, right? Like you said, we're energy, everything is frequency, and there's geometry behind it as well. And so all my coaching and programs are based off the Radiant Health Protocol, which is essentially my experience that I created into a system to help others. And so there's 6 pillars in this protocol, and they are based off of the main 2 underlying root causes of any conditions, which are that emotional energetics and gut health. And so I do want to kind of draw that bridge quickly as well, is because when we do experience the stress and these emotions, it directly affects our gut health and our gut microbiome, which is the ruler of our body. That is where all disease begins, right? So Hippocrates said it, right? It's like the gut is where all disease begins. So when we have these stressors and emotions, one, it can rewire our nervous system from childhood, which again affects that emotional energetic piece, but it also changes our gut microbiome and our gut health from a young age. And so many of the, again, adults, and even I work with babies a lot as well, but even adults, when we trace it back, there were gut issues from early on. And so when we work with these 2 main underlying root causes, that's when we get resolution of symptoms. That's when we get healing to happen. That's when we can reverse things like autoimmunity and diabetes and chronic conditions. So essentially, the protocol is based off of those 2 root causes, and emotional energetics is broken down into nervous system regulation as well, and decoding the body, which utilizes aspects of spiritual alignment as well as divine intuition, muscle testing, etc. And then the gut health portion is broken down into holistic nutrition and nourishment, as well as detoxification, integrative detoxification. If you address this, everything changes. So what I have are, again, one-on-one coaching options. I have a Radiant mastermind that people can join. And I also have these introductory programs that people can jump in to just get started if they're not ready to fully dive into one-on-one coaching. So like right now, I'm just finishing up the summer holistic detox program, and it starts with a mini retreat. And then you get a month of support to really start integrating and applying the steps and the techniques, as well as support for the emotional energetic integration, because that's what I found when I used to do just standalone mini retreats, and they were fantastic. And then people would be like, oh my gosh, all this stuff is now coming up afterwards. And I want to be able to support people with that as well. So these programs are a great way to start. And then there's the Wellness by Design mini retreat and program. And that is a visioning, essentially, experience where we see where do we want our health and wellness to be. And we start energetically anchoring that identity in and kind of creating our journey for how we're getting there. So those are kind of the 2 introductory programs that I have that I do every couple of months. So that's a great way to jump in. I also have a YouTube channel and podcast with lots of information on there. And I also do monthly masterclasses. So these monthly masterclasses focus on a specific condition or topic. And essentially, I give you lots of tips and action steps of how we use that Radiant Health protocol to apply it. So I've done everything from food allergies, weight loss. I just did one on fertility. And so, if you haven't seen your topic yet, send me a message and I'm more than happy to add it to the list and just kind of keep that coming. The underlying root causes are the same. They just present themselves differently and to a different extent in each person.
I love it. And I will put links to all of her information in our episode. And so you guys can easily find all of her amazing things that she just talked about and everything that she's got going on over there. So if there is one thing or maybe a couple things that you would like to leave as your legacy and your impact, reflecting on your journey and just thinking about where you are and what you would like to leave behind when you are no longer here, what would that be?
Yeah, that's a beautiful, deep question, Jen. And honestly, it is to really have, again, this empowerment piece that no matter what we've been through, no matter what we've experienced, no matter what state we're in right now, physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, right, energetically, that we have agency and we have a way to heal. And it just takes one person. So by you healing, it creates a ripple effect. And so each of us is so crucial and vital when we look at this world, right? Humanity as a whole. And even if you feel like, oh, I don't have time to do that, or, oh, I don't know if I can do that, just starting literally will change not just your life, but it'll change the lives of everyone around you. And that's one of the things as well is I love working with little ones. I love working with, again, parents too, because that's when we're making those generational shifts. And when I have a client who's like, oh, hey, I was doing this nervous system regulation technique and my son started doing it with me. And I'm like, nothing makes me happier because that is, again, generations being affected and changed. And so that's almost my grand vision, is that one way or another, we can touch every single human life and start integrating this healing and these approaches and strategies and tools so that no one has to suffer for longer than they need to, and we can all heal.
Yes. That is beautiful. Thank you so much for the work that you're doing. I appreciate you. I am just so, so excited to have you be sharing your information with the world. I think that this is important. I love what you said about empowering ourselves and also that it is possible to heal. And I just am a fan of your methodology. I love what you're doing. And so thank you so much for joining us today and being here and sharing your wisdom with us.
Thank you so much, Jen. I appreciate you as well.